Katherine Blake. Humboldt, Iowa. I was born in September of 1983. I joined the Air Force in 2004. I never originally thought that I would do 20 years. And then once I decided that this was going to be for me and this was going to be a career, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a master sergeant and I'm going to be at that level and take care of my people. And so when I made that rank, it was really special for me. So my job is an aerospace control and warning systems operator, which really doesn't mean a whole lot of anything to everybody. Basically what I do, it's kind of like air traffic control, but they keep aircraft away and we bring aircraft together. So if we're putting bombs on target on the ground, if we're doing data links, that's my specialty. So data links being what drives the war nowadays. We have a pretty big Army representation in my family. I don't know any of the relatives really that were all in the Army. They were my great uncles, but my uncle, my mom's brother-in-law, he was in the Navy, and he was kind of the biggest influence in my life as far as male role model, plus being in the military. He retired from the Navy. He was a Vietnam and Korea war vet. And so I always remember we had this picture growing up of them in our house. It was my uncle, my auntie, and their 3 kids. And the 2 boys and my uncle were wearing their dress whites, if that's what the Navy calls them. And that picture is still ingrained in my head. And then my dad's actually served in the Royal Danish Air Force or the Royal Danish Army. It's too late to ask because he's passed away, but he served, I think it was in the Army. We came across some of his stuff after he passed away, but of course we can't read it, and right now I just can't remember what exactly it was, which service it was. So I'm actually a first-generation daughter of an immigrant. My dad immigrated from Denmark in, I want to say, sometime in the 60s. I don't quite remember. He grew up in Denmark. He served his required time, which I believe was 4 years in the military. And then he decided that he was done. He moved to Canada so he could work, then to learn English, and then to save money and be able to take his American citizenship test. So my dad did have a green card, so he did all of the work to get himself here, and then oddly enough, from Canada, he moved to Florida and he actually hated it. And then he moved to Iowa. There's a very strong German and Danish population where I grew up in northern Iowa. And he said that it looked like home, it felt like home, but it wasn't where he felt trapped. And so that's where he stayed. Worked at John Deere. He worked various different jobs until he finally decided that construction was what he liked to do, and that's what he did. We weren't allowed to have guns as a kid, as far as like squirt guns, water guns, snap guns, any of the stuff that every other kid would have, we couldn't have, and we never knew why. And it wasn't until we were older that my dad explained that when World War II was ending and the soldiers were being told that, him and my uncle and one of their friends, when my dad was born in 1934, so he was like 12-ish around this time, and they were out in the middle of a boat on a small lake with a bridge over it, and there were soldiers that were told that the war was over, and they were supposed to get rid of all of their ammunition. They couldn't turn it back in, they needed to get rid of it, and so they started taking pot shots of my dad and my uncle and their friend, and literally from that day, my dad had never, ever touched a gun, never held a gun, didn't allow us to have any of that stuff. So it was a really big surprise, you know, for my dad when my brother decided to join the Army in 1989, and then when I joined the Air Force, because it was something that he was very set against, very outspoken. My dad said that I needed to stay home and raise babies and cook food in the kitchen because that's where he thought women belonged. My dad, obviously, being born in a different country at a different time, he always referred to it as the old country, and women didn't do things for themselves. They didn't join the military, they didn't work for themselves, they didn't earn their own money. So for me to do it, my dad was just really taken aback, and for a long time he seemed disappointed about my decision, but he did eventually tell me that he was very proud of me for my service, and he actually wanted to see me in my dress uniform, which was always a huge shock to me. It was very interesting. I always thought I was a pretty independent person. I went to Lackland Air Force Base in 2004, October time frame, and I remember getting there just thinking I was completely out of my element, but I wasn't alone in that. So I'm really good at being told what to do. I don't like getting yelled at, which why you join the military with that kind of perception, I have no idea, but I did everything I was supposed to do. I was really good at marching, but I just wasn't an outstanding airman by any means. I mean, I was terrible at PT. I definitely did not do the homework beforehand. So taking to it was really interesting in that perspective, because everything else I did really well at. And I remember my mom just waiting for my phone call during, at that point, what was after your 4th week of training. You pass your PT test and you'll graduate on time. As long as you don't screw it up the last 2 to 3 weeks, you would be fine. And I remember passing my PT test with 3 seconds to spare on my run. And I was just so excited and so disappointed in myself all at the same time, because getting that close is just, that's not how I live my life. And that was when I determined, you know what, we're not going to get that close. And I've never been that close to failing my PTT test ever. I was the second to last enlisted person of my recruiter before he retired. And he actually wrote down my AFSC wrong. And the AFSC they wrote me down as, you couldn't have terrible vision like I had at the time. And they actually enlisted me as the officer side of my job instead of the enlisted. He just added one extra letter into my AFSC where I could go to drill weekend, but I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go to my tech school where I could learn my job. I couldn't do anything. So I remember I had just graduated from community college. I had no money. I had no job because this had taken up so much time. And so when I had to go to annual training, the people in my shop actually passed a literal hat around and put money in it so I could go to annual training, because I wasn't authorized to have a government credit card at that time, and I didn't have the money to support myself. It wasn't until a 2-star general at the Air National Guard Bureau in DC goes, I don't concur with this, because if you just look 27 pages prior in this waiver, it was a non-issue. So if all of the people in between would have just looked, but it took a 2-star in order to fix my career, to get it started. The people that I had in my shop, especially at that time, I'm still in contact with a handful of them. There's a retired lieutenant colonel that I'm still friends with, and he was the embodiment of look out for your people, do whatever it takes to make sure that everyone is included and to make sure that everyone is taken care of. And even to this day, he still talks about that. He still brings it up. We still talk about it, because that's how pivotal it was in my career for him to have done that for me. I've deployed twice, once in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and once in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. They were both done in the United Arab Emirates. So Operation Inherent Resolve was in 2017 to 2018, and then Operation Enduring Freedom was 2014 to 2015. And the base itself was really nice. It was laid out well, and it was easy to navigate. We worked 6 days a week, so we did have one actual day off where you're not required to do anything. Most times you were allowed to go off base. There were certain areas, of course, that we couldn't go. I was very fortunate because I got to go to Abu Dhabi and I got to go to Dubai. most people never see Dubai in the world. And then there was also other events that we got to do. So I was hand selected on my first deployment to go see Her Majesty's ship, the Dauntless, which was really, really cool. They had ported in Dubai, and I don't even know how it came up, but the captain of the ship found out that I was the niece of a Navy chief, and he actually let me sit in his chair right at the helm of the ship, and it was super cool. He even took my photo, like this guy is taking my photo because he thinks it's great, and I'm just in awe of the fact that I was being able to do this. And the reason that event was so cool for me is because my uncle was on one of the very first ships that ported in Dubai when it became an international port. And so I took a picture of the skyline for my uncle and I sent it to him, and he was just amazed. Between my 2 deployments, the day that I finished my first 10K, I was just so proud of myself. And so even though it was almost 7 years ago, I still remember it. I'd set a goal, I did the work, and then I actually achieved it, and it was so hot. The temperature actually was almost the same as the humidity that day. It was something like 97 degrees at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is stupid. And the first 5K was fine. I was doing just fine. And as soon as I turned the corner to start my next 5K, I felt delirious. I'm completely drenched. I'm like having to keep running and tie my shorts at the same time because everything is soaked, and I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my shorts. And this lady is running with me. She's like, just keep going, we'll be fine. And we were the last 2 to finish, but I met my goal, and I was just so thankful for her because I probably honestly would have quit if she wouldn't be there. But I knew that if I quit that I'd be so disappointed in myself. And then on my second deployment, I actually did another 10K, and it went much better. And it was foggy that day, which was amazing. But I did much better, and I had a much better attitude about it. But nothing was quite that rewarding because I'd never ran 6 miles at once in my entire life. If I set a goal, I always want to succeed, and I have always set exceptionally high standards for myself, much to the chagrin of the airmen that I am over, because I have to be reminded constantly that I have to hold them to the minimum standard. I can't hold them to my personal standard, and I have a hard time with that, and I know that I have a hard time with it. But I think just doing something when you're not good at it and having success in meeting that goal, just so rewarding for me. Coming home is the best. Nothing beats seeing the faces that you have missed and getting a hug from the people that you've been waiting this long to hug for forever. And then my second deployment, I actually did a surprise visit with my nephew, and it was actually really awesome because he had no idea that his class was actually writing letters to my unit overseas. And all of his letters, like, of course I read them, and he was always like, oh, do you know my Aunt Kate? She's with the 133rd. She's in UAE right now. If you see her, can you say hi? And I had arranged it with his teacher to be a special guest speaker to his class. And I walked in, and he actually almost didn't notice that it was me because he's accustomed to seeing people in uniform. And then he was at my side the rest of the time, and it was just the best feeling.